12th August on decolonizing the discourse. Changing the syllabus has been an important demand of the decolonization movements. What these decolonization movements has made the eurocentric and hierarchical nature of syllabus very visible. This is also related to the demand for pluralism. So let us start with an understanding of what it means to be eurocentric. Broadly speaking, there are two views about being eurocentric. One comes from the post-colonial theorists like Edward Said. They see this as a set of attitudes that takes a particular form of discourse which do not explore the inequalities they produce or the specific regimes of accumulation, expropriation, and exploitation. There is also an anti-imperialist Marxian stand, and that sees it as a globalizing project that reinforces imperialism or systematic inequalities and how dominant understanding of capitalism fails to recognize post-colonial experience of capitalist development. So based on this, the author of this article puts forward a concept of Eurocentrism to continue the discussion in this article. According to the authors, Eurocentrism, position that they have taken in this article, in this paper, is that Eurocentrism is an understanding of the world that center on the idea of endogenous capitalist development in Western Europe. It is the outcome of Enlightenment values of the capitalist development itself is the outcome of Enlightenment values of rationality and objectivity. And Eurocentric view sees any other social process that is not aligned to capitalist imagination is devalued and imperfect. In this view, Europe is the center and capitalism is the hegemonic order with Europe at its essence. The rest of the world, according to this view, is expected to transition along the Eurocentric capitalist imagination. This Eurocentric view ignores the process of colonization, the slave trade, drain of wealth from other countries, racial violence, and other forms of structured subordination. And these underpinned the development of capitalism in other countries and restricted development. These factors underpin the development of capitalism. This is completely ignored. Also the fact that these drain of wealth, slave trade, etc., that overall the whole process of colonialism restricted the development of any economic development in other countries. It further sweeps under carpet all forms of systematic oppression that Eurocentric view continues to create. Now, Eurocentric economics is any economic theory that accepts this position and start theorizing from this point of view. Eurocentric theories are presented as neutral, despite the fact that it is based on a particular ideology and a particular worldview. This also obscures the other alternatives, ways of understanding the world. So this further leads to the idea of the universality. So neutrality and universality are very closely related. From the lens of decolonization, we can see the core of economics is Eurocentric. Economics presents capitalism as a rational, organized system with a number of laws that is the same everywhere. They accept these laws are imperfect, but they can be managed. In this view, contradictions and antagonisms are absent. In recent years, the Eurocentrism in economics has deepened, especially after 1970s. So what happened after this in recent years, recent decades, after the war especially, that mainstream field of economics is theoretically narrow. It relies on neoclassical foundations of rational and consistent economic actors, perfectly functioning markets, economic equilibrium as a starting point of all analysis. And embedded in this is the idea of methodological individualism. That is, firms, households are taken as independent units. For those who accept this and those who study and accept this methodological individualism, it is very difficult for them to see why structural inequalities, exploitation, and for them to understand the structural inequalities that exist in the society, exploitation, domination, and interaction with other social process, and inherent contradictions of capitalism. They cannot see these. In recent years, further, economics see themselves as objective modelers. So they analyze the economic phenomenon with the help of mathematical deduction, laws, or uniformities. And the emphasis is on empirical rigor. And recent turn in empirical turn, that is the rise of behavioral economics, has made this making model and test them. That is the idea of the empirical. So they test this and try to prove it. And therefore they see economics as some type of a plumbers. Their work is to fix the something that is gone technically. They are technicians. They are seen as technicians. Now, what would decolonizing economics mean? Would imply there are two important tasks. One is that unpack mainstream of the field, that if you can expose how it generates and perpetuates Eurocentrism. The other is explore non-Eurocentric ways of understanding the world. That is, centering of structural forms of expression, such as imperialism, dispossession, and racism, as important forces that need to be grappled. And it is by bringing these to the center of economic analysis that and these shape the global economy. And that way we can try to decolonize economics. Now, decolonizing social sciences or economics is not just replacing Eurocentric views with other projections, but it is a recognition that a theory is only a partial explanation because society is multidimensional. We need to make space for alternative frameworks that take social structures as a starting point. For example, Marxist analysis of class reveals exploitation, even if the markets are functioning perfectly competitive. So there we take this other framework, that framework of individualism, individual as the unit, but as class as a unit of society, if you can introduce this. Now, how is economics teaching Eurocentric? We can see a number of points which shows that economics teaching is Eurocentric. The core of curricula is standard across the world. So there is macroeconomics, microeconomics, which is the same all over the world. And there is heavy reliance on textbooks, and these are produced, the core textbooks are produced in Western countries. There is little discussion of power and relations of dominance. They present economics as a set of principles to be learned. What are some of these principles? There are some 10 principles, they say, which are the core principles of economics. Markets are a good way to organize economic activities. governments can sometimes improve market outcomes, and sustained effort to think like an economics. That is the purpose, how to think like an economics. Economics provides a set of tools to make decisions. The present economic teaching do not expose students to the fundamental different theoretical framework. There are different theoretical frameworks, neoclassical, Marxian, and Keynesian, to understand the economic phenomenon. Each would interpret it in a different way, but we only teach one, that is neoclassical. Now, in decolonizing economics teaching, we can do it in considering these three issues. One is the embedded understanding of the economy within the broader process. That is, the central critique of economics is that it sees economy as a separate entity. So economics is considered like least interdisciplinary. They generally don't collaborate because we are separate. You can see economy as a separate thing. We need not relate. So they try to see everything in the framework of market. Now there is a writer he got Nobel Prize, marriage. This is a social relationship, but an economics who got a Nobel Prize called Gary Becker, he interprets marriage as an economic relationship, a market relationship. There is a paper, actually, if you search, you can find. So this way, everything is put into that framework to understand, and they say this gives us a better understanding of the phenomenon. So we try to change that and see that economics is embedded in the broader social process, creating space of studying approaches that see social structures constitutive of economic process. That is how to embed this. Second way we can decolonize economics teaching is challenge the field's claim to neutrality and universality. So by presenting, this is more like the plurality, various economic understanding, various schools of thought be presented, and various perspectives. And part of this is exposing how knowledge production is embedded in unequal power relations. So economic thinking itself, that the history of economic thinking is the result of unequal power relations. So that a particular economic thought has arisen in a particular historical situation, and by discussing this and exposing the students, we can decolonize. A third way we can decolonize, is recognizing various forms of power inequalities that shape the economic process. So we say that while we criticize that the eurocentrism is oppressive of other countries, but we also have to recognize that in the South, in the global South, these other factors are also there. They are also oppressive, and we have to recognize them. For example, caste, race, gender, class, etc. We can introduce this into our teaching. Another is a better understanding of the history of economic thought. Now we teach history of economic thought generally is taught as cumulative and linear. So one thought went from this to the other without glossing over different disagreements and debates that continue to exist. Though those thoughts have gone away, Keynesianism is gone, but it is still there. So those debates and how one particular thought came to dominate, this also can be discussed. We can also decolonize by changing the pedagogy. Now, Paulo Freire's critical pedagogy is very useful for alliance with the decolonization. According to Freire, the present, that is instrumental pedagogy, is the present one, sees students as empty vessels into which knowledge is put. That is the instrumental. Students are trained in concrete and identity. They should have some skills. Once they come out of the graduate school, they'll have some skills to problem solving, specific techniques, knowledge of facts, and how to apply this knowledge, apply this theory to some situations. So the outcome expected is students remembering facts or equipping with the tools. The critical pedagogy is student-centered. So it would be critiquing everyday concepts in a process of promoting conscientization. This is decolonial pedagogy. We should think how we can introduce this along with instrumental pedagogy to introduce critical pedagogy also, and recognizing the politics of knowledge creation. So let me conclude my presentation. Economic and political neocolonialism is well known, but intellectual neocolonialism is not widely discussed. There are parallels here. Economic neocolonialism is achieved through the international economic and political institutions. Intellectual neocolonialism is achieved through control of institutions of knowledge and the media of transmission of this knowledge. Universities play a key role in this. The knowledge created in Western countries are eurocentric and racist. Universities in Western countries were created during colonial period and justified colonialism. Now there is an opportunity for us to challenge this intellectual colonialism. By challenging the eurocentrism of economics, we are trying to make a beginning to decolonize the intellectual sphere. It is in this context we are organizing this decolonizing the discourse. And I hope if we can participate in this, we can make a good beginning. Thank you very much. Let me, I have finished my presentation. Let me stop recording.